Exactly, again.
Quite good to have you again.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoy the presentation. And we are going to translate to Swedish after I start. Marisa is going to record the talk.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So it's a great pleasure to be back again. And so I've been talking about large language models and trustworthiness the last couple of days. So therefore I thought I would be talking about something different this time. So I'm going to talk about basically the work that we have been doing in Sweden on developing a roadmap for Sweden. So I've been part of this National Swedish AI Commission. And I'm going to talk about the work that we have done. And I'm also going to relate it to the Brazilian AI strategy because I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. And of course, I'm more than happy to take any questions. So basically, okay, I was just doing it last minute and I realized I was in the middle of something. Anyway, I forgot to remove the Swedish text. So basically, I had a Swedish presentation and then I had to translate that. So, okay. So basically the directives that we got was to propose the necessary conditions to meet the future needs of AI usage and AI development. We will propose initiatives to increase AI usage in public administration. And we should complete the implementation and data. We should also see how we can attract more venture capital and how we can facilitate innovation and strengthen competitiveness. We should also look at how does this influence national security and how can we prevent undue influence on democracy. How can we be more active both in the EU but also globally as well. Sweden is a relatively small but export-dependent country, so of course we need to work together with others. There were also some interesting omissions that was not mentioned in our directives. So there's nothing about analyzing like effects of labor markets. And there was also, we were not allowed to give any recommendation when it comes to primary education. So that was the only thing we were not allowed to make any recommendations on. Well, we can take that as a separate why. So basically, the commission consists of 11 people. Sorry, apologies for that. So the chairperson from Wallenberg, he used to be the CEO of Petroleum, and so he's kind of having this international executive missions. And then we have a few other people both from companies, from the Swedish Engineering Union. We also have Niklas Lundblad from Google DeepMind, as he's a Swede, but he's working as a global policy director at Google DeepMind, so he was also part of this. We also have people working from the municipalities, so and also the director of AI Sweden. So I would say with a broad group of people. So we were the kind of official commission, but we also had high-level CEOs that were also part of these discussions. So we had CEO of Ericsson, we have Börje Ekholm, the CEO of Volvo, and the chairman of one of the largest Swedish energy provider was also there. And then we also had two director generals for the tax authority and the director general for the national insurance company. It's really the national insurance agency. So they were also representing like the public sector. And then we also had like staff that was helping us in this. So it's a relatively small commission. And basically the overall objective was really to make recommendations for Sweden when it comes to being both more competitive, but also to have a well-functioning welfare system. So actually our work started well, we had our first unofficial meeting in December 2023, Officially, we started the 1st of January 2024. And our original target was to deliver our report by this summer, by end of June 2025. But one of the things that we realized is that things are going very quickly, so therefore we cannot wait. So we basically cut our time in half and delivered our report at the end of November. So basically after 9 months, we delivered our report. So through this process, we actually had a large number of different meetings. I luckily was not part of all of them, but we had hundreds of meetings with thousands of people. So really trying to have a very inclusive way of working. So basically anyone who wanted to meet, well, they got a chance to meet. So we got very much, a lot of input from these different, for everything, from individuals to companies to public sector organizations and so on and so forth. I think the general feeling was that there were significant expectations. So everyone expected us to achieve a lot of things, but there was also very eager to get started. So that we weren't any resistance. So it wasn't like, oh, we don't want to do this, please stay away. But rather it was very clear that there was a general interest in, willingness to engage in this, and also a openness for this. And actually, I think the number one feedback we got was really that we all want to do something, but we need someone to basically take charge and show us the direction. So that maybe here I need to say a little bit about the way that the Swedish governance works. It's extremely decentralized. So basically, the ministers are not allowed to tell the authorities what to do because they're only allowed to give them like written instructions. Then they're not allowed to interfere in any of the agency work. So each government agency is an autonomous agency run by a director general, and they basically do whatever they want within their remit. So we have a very decentralized organization, which makes it hard to kind of achieve this kind of coherent way of working. But it has also served us very well. So actually, it was introduced in the 17th century, as we had a very, famous chancellor who basically organized the Swedish government in the mid-1600s. And even when the king died, everything kept on working. So that will be. But now it's kind of has its issue now that it's 350 years old, 380 years. So we also kind of looked at, when we start, where are we? And that is basically the starting point is really that AI will change everything. So having this perspective that we think there will be a major transformation of society, just like we had with the railroad, electricity, telephone, and so on. So in some sense, we can think about how did we do it back then. So we have already done this, and most countries have done this kind of things many times before. So apparently, it's not something strange; it's something we have done previously. And one thing that we realized is that when you built out the railroads in the late 1800s, basically there was no one said, "Oh, you can count on exactly how much money will we make if we build a railroad. And why should we build it here? Why should we build it somewhere else?" It was just, we want to be a country with a railroad. If we want to be a country with a railroad, we have to build a railroad. And then you built the railroad. And then you found out the ways that you could benefit from the railroad afterwards. So not everything was known in advance. And actually, if you look at the investments that was being done, I saw some figures that the UK invested on between 5 and 10% of GDP every year on building out the railroad. So basically, they spend a significant part of the GDP to build out the railroad. So apparently, we have been able to do this kind of things before. So of course, we think that we can do it again. We also thought that the change is very fast. We are behind, at least we're kind of not as fast as we would like to be. And we also think that there's a danger if we are further delayed. So there is really this sense of urgency. There is a need to actually act and to act now. And as I said, we therefore reduced our own time and delivered a report after half the time. And according to the Swedish Prime Minister, we were the first to ever ask for that. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what he said. As I said, we have been doing this before, but what is different this time? So we're relatively late to start, but I think this is actually the more significant ones. We do not have the technology leaders. So, for example, when we built out electricity, we had these big electricity companies. When we built out the telecom networks, we had Ericsson and so on. So then we had the technology providers. So it's kind of natural to work together with them. But now we do not really have the technology leaders, that they are not in Europe for that matter. And we also, of course, have this fast regulation that is kind of part of it. So there are clear things that are different compared to before. What's in our favor? As I said, we have done this before. We also have high trust society, which makes it much easier to do significant changes. And we also have, this is a very bad translation, but basically there's a good conversation climate. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of interaction between the public sector, the private sector, politicians, and so on. So it is relatively easy to talk and to agree upon things. We also looked in this rankings. So actually, we wanted to have some kind of external measurement on how things are going. And you may question these kind of rankings, but at least we chose to look especially at this global AI index, because it basically covers most of the aspects that we were interested in. And then if you look at this global AI index, actually Sweden is kind of falling down in this ranking. So we were in 15th place in 2020, 19th in 2021, 17th in 23, and now we're down to 25. And in some sense, I think it's not really that we are being bad. It's more about other countries have been better. So I think that's the thing. And you can look at this and translate all the different things, but we're doing quite well in talent and in operative environment and so on. But there are some things we need to improve in, especially this energy production. The second is about telecom, so it's about connectivity. So of course you need connectivity. Actually, we have been part of developing 5G, maybe through Ericsson, but due to the way that Europe is structured with relatively many small telecom providers, it means that none of the telecom providers are large enough to be able to take the investments of actually investing in 5G. So actually the 5G build out in Europe is very, very poor. We most of the time don't have proper 5G where you have these two different bandwidths that you need to cover. Usually it's only one of the bands, and then you just use the 5G protocol over the old frequencies. So this is actually a major issue, and it's, I would say it's the same for all of Europe, where one is focused too much on competitiveness and basically lowering the prices for the consumers, and they lower them so much that the companies cannot do an investment, which means that we're stuck with old technology. And then you can look, for example, in India. In India, they built out 5G in 10 months to 1 billion people in 10 months. So apparently it is possible to do it if you just have the resources. So here we have an issue that needs to be. We also talked about compute. This is another one of these kind of foundational parts that you need in order to do this. Both the trade models, but also the use models. So here, actually, we have relatively good when it comes to the academic AI infrastructure. So we both have our own academic infrastructure, but we also have a Euro HPC, so that's the European Networks of High Performance Computing. So we also get funding from the EU to build up computing power. And now we also got what's called an AI factory. So this is the EU concept of how do we make high performance computing accessible to companies and to public sector organizations and so on. So it's about funding to build up support and competence development around HPC so we can make it available. So actually, we got one of those 12, so there are 7 AI factories in Europe, and one of them is in Linköping, where we also have a Euro agency. So actually, we have all the HPC resources is being coordinated from Linköping University. We also need data. I don't like the first statement, but it's not my words. But anyway, I mean, data is really an enabler. An enabler for AI development. And actually, we have quite high quality, quite a lot of data available, especially in the public sector is very good at collecting data in a structured manner. However, we're absolutely terrible at sharing the data. And basically, the sharing is, of course, the key. And basically, the issue is that basically you only share if you have an explicit reason to share. Which means that if there is not an explicit reason, you don't do it. So of course, this is based on this kind of data minimization thing and so on. But in these particular cases, that becomes kind of an issue. So actually, we are proposed that one should look into, maybe we should switch the norm so that the normal is that you share unless there is a reason for not sharing. For example, privacy or integrity. And I would say that due to other things, there's currently a push to increase sharing between government agencies, but it is not that easy. As I mentioned in the beginning, I said that each agency is autonomous, and that means that, for example, just take one case, all the courts, I don't know how many courts there are, 60, 70 courts, something like that in the country, each court is an independent authority. But there is one agency that provides like the IT infrastructure for the courts, but then they need to have one instance for each court so that they are separate, so that there is no sharing between the different courts. So it's the same legal system, but they're not even allowed to share between the courts. So it's clearly that it's very, very, let's say, conservative when it comes to sharing. And this is something we think needs to be changed. And of course, it's also we need to simplify and make the rules about, for example, sharing clearer. And we also need to deal with data governance, improve data governance. Uh, uh, we also need to work on research. So as I said, I think this is really the key. You want to have the latest knowledge and also be part of developing it so that you can to actually develop the technology that you need for your own application use cases. So you're not just dependent on hoping that others will develop the things you need. So here we propose to have three centers of excellence, and we said that the funding should be about $10 million per year for 10 years, so roughly $100 million per center over 10 years. So to get sufficient size to actually be able to do something. So that was one proposal. We also proposed that we should have postdoc positions. I think we said 200, a few hundred postdoc positions that was also going to be funded. And also we want to support having shared positions between academia and industry, or between academia and public sector, so that you get people that can transfer knowledge between different organizations. And finally, so actually we have this in healthcare. So in healthcare, basically every medical doctor has a clinical position at the hospital, and then they usually have some affiliation with the university if they do research and so on. So we want to have that kind of separation in the clinical work and the research work, and we do that in other areas as well, in medical areas. And we also propose to build up national graduate schools. So I think we set on the order of 600 PhDs over 10 years, just to reasonably large scale to also increase the knowledge and to do research. And then we have this competence development for all, and it's really about lifting the overall population. I didn't know how to translate that, so basically educating the general population. Probably a nice word for that, but I didn't know it, so I guess I need to educate myself. But anyways, actually we have quite a strong tradition of having this kind of citizen universities, taking courses in the evening, and so on. Like, just not because anyone has to, not to get a job, more because people want to learn more things. So actually we have quite a strong tradition around this kind of continuous education, and we wanted to support that and focus more on the AI. So actually, when we had when the PC came in the early 90s, we had something called the PC reform, which is kind of a strange name, but basically what it made was that it made subsidies for families to buy a computer to have at home. So basically the government subsidized the purchase, and then people had computers at home, and then they start to learn things. So a lot of in my generation, or has been that grew up in the 90s, have had computers at home thanks to this initiative. And actually, there are many people claim that, for example, that we have been good with computer games and so on. Is to a large degree thanks to this. So we wanted to propose something similar for AI. So what would be the corresponding thing to subsidizing buying a computer? Then it's of course making AI tools available. So we propose to have some kind of national AI hub where you can access different AI tools so that you can try them out, learn how to use them, experiment, and so on. This seems that was quite a lot of interest, but also a lot of people who don't think it's a good idea. We also want to focus on teaching the teachers. So both at the focus here was actually at the university level, so that the university teachers know more about AI, and then they can introduce it in their teaching. As I said, we were not allowed to make recommendations on primary education, but of course, primary education is really key as well. We just made some statements that we are not particularly worried about this with job displacement. New jobs will be created, old jobs will disappear, and this is quite a natural process. But what's needed is that you need to support the workers in doing this transformation. And actually, this has been something we have been quite good at in doing this kind of gradual transformation of the workforce, and to work a lot with competence development, especially. So all the unions and so on have been working on this. So we think we can do this quite well. And actually, we have already, before our work, we had something called, basically, it's even if you're older, you can then get financial support to do a university education to switch careers. So basically, you have to apply and say that if I get this education, it will allow me to switch careers from something that maybe not that beneficial today into something that's more beneficial for society, and then you can get funding to support your studies. But this is like a master's degree, so for doing a master's degree and so on. And again, I think we know how to do this. We have been doing it for quite some time. So that was the kind of foundations. If we then look at the public sector, we really think that we need this kind of forward-leaning public sector. So we should really enable all of public sector to be able to use AI. And I would say that there is definitely an interest. So actually, many of the kind of meetings, interactions we had was with the public sector. But it was just that there is a lack of guidance, there is a lack of leadership, and there's also a lack of infrastructure. So actually, I think this has been pointed out before that the number one problem is with, or number leadership is first, but the second one is really on the AI infrastructure part. So basically, the effect here is that each of these authorities, they need to do their own infrastructure. And then we have 400 different government agencies. We have 290 municipalities. We have 25 regions. And of course, each and every one of those are going to build up an infrastructure. It will become small, bad, and expensive. So therefore, we think it's much more efficient if we have a national AI infrastructure that all the government agencies can use. And actually, we already have two government agencies, the National Tax Authority and the National Insurance Agency, who are quite good at maintaining, because they're already running very large, more traditional AI systems. So actually, in Sweden, it's extremely simple to do your taxes. Basically, you get the list. This is your filled-in form. You get in the filled-in form. You just have to say yes if you agree, and you say yes. You just text them and say yes, I agree, and then you're done. So doing the taxes is really simple, unless you want to choose. And also the national insurance. So, for example, if you have kids and one of the kids gets sick, you need to stay at home. You basically just go to a web page. You say, I have to stay at home today, and then you're done. And then you will get the subsidies. Instead of getting your salary, you will get from the insurance agency. And all this is basically automated. All these kind of decisions, so you don't need to wait for these decisions. So actually, it's been very much streamlined many of these public services. But now we wanted to make that available to everyone. So we recommended that these two organizations should be given the task of building up this kind of AI infrastructure. We actually called it an AI workshop because we wanted it to be an active place to also do experimentation and to learn, and not only just providing services. Regulatory sandboxes. So this is a concept from the EU level. Part of this AI Act is that you should be able to do basically, the challenge is that it's difficult to know in advance whether your technical solutions actually live up to the regulation. So the intention is to be able to, under controlled circumstances, basically develop your technical solution in order to be compliant. But
there's a ton of issues related to that, but we are in favor, we're positive towards this regulatory sandboxes as a way of supporting innovation, but also innovation in accordance with regulation. When it comes to venture capital and innovation, so Sweden, like most of Europe, has this problem of having very risk-averse investors. They don't like taking risks, which means that if you have a promising company, so actually we're pretty good at startups. We have quite a lot of startups, but the problem is doing the scale-ups because then we don't get investors that are willing to put in, I don't know, $1 billion in order to hopefully grow a company large. But if you want that kind of investment, you basically have to go to the US or to Asia to get that kind of funding. So we think that's unfortunate, but we hope that the fund can at least support this kind of high-risk investments. So actually we did a lot of proposals that I've already mentioned. We also think this legal certainty is really a key. We also think developing a national supporting developing multimodal language models for Swedish and making them available is also a key competitive advantage. Actually, I think this is probably the one that was the most contended. This has been one of the most contended things, whether one should do this kind of national models or not. Personally, I'm in favor, and I think these models will reflect our culture and our values. So if you want to have models that reflect your culture, your values, you basically need to do them yourselves. And I also think that very much many applications will be built on top of these, which means that if you're using other people's models, you will be paying for this, and basically you have to, the investments will be made anyway, but instead of making investment within your country, you're basically making investment in other countries. So therefore, I think we should do this. When it comes to more national security and democracy, we of course see that the geopolitical landscape is just becoming more and more complex and more absurd. But this is just a reality that one needs to deal with. And I think it's very clear that there is a need to increase the national sovereignty, strategic autonomy when it comes to access to these kind of technologies. That, of course, we are more than happy to use what other countries are developing, but we really need to at least be prepared to deal with it ourselves. We also believe that AI can increase the security. And actually, of course, we know that the bad guys will be using AI. They are already doing it today. So it's obvious that whoever wants to doesn't like you will use this technology. So probably the best countermeasure is, of course, to have the same kind of capabilities, because it's all about reacting fast to new and unforeseen patterns or behavior, and using AI to detect these kind of behaviors and these kind of attacks. I think it's going to be better than we are. So we have what's called a cyber camp in Sweden. So basically, we are collecting a lot of the cybersecurity related activities. So it's been led by KTH in Stockholm, but there is basically a national initiative to work with cybersecurity. So we think that should be, we need more funding for that. We also talked about establishing a safety institute. It seems like these ideas are no longer popular, so the UK renamed the safety institute into security institute. Yeah. But anyway, the point is more that you need to collect and focus on this kind of safety-related issues. And of course, education is also a major benefit in order to deal with security. When it comes to more international aspects, I would say Sweden is generally a global friendly country. We like globalization, we like export, and so on. We like collaboration. We are, of course, part of the EU, but I would say we have been quite passive in the EU. We're usually one of those that want you to be smaller and do less. So that's been our traditional role. But we think we need to be more engaged, because basically much of the decisions and investments and so on are being done there. So if we want to be part of it, if we want to we actually have an opportunity to direct or to push the investments in the EU in a more relevant direction for us. We think we should not regulate too early, so I guess we read that as too much. We need to find a way of leveraging EU funding, and of course, we want to collaborate with the best. So it's also an internationally friendly perspective. And we have leadership. So basically, this is the summary. So we really think we need a central task force, basically directly under the Prime Minister, because the problem here is that when you have many different departments, they all have their own kind of priorities and so on, but you need to work across the different departments. And the only thing that the only place where that work is basically directly under the Prime Minister. So actually, the Prime Minister, so officially, our mission was not given by the Prime Minister, it was given by our digitalization minister. But actually, both when the task was announced and when we delivered the report, the Prime Minister was there. So we know that there is support also from that. Still haven't seen the task force yet. We also think, I mean, the whole point here is, so I mean, our number one message was really this: there's a danger in delaying. We need to get started quickly. And basically, we wanted this centralized task force just to make sure that things get done. And we can decide on an AI strategy. We have this roadmap, which would be the basis of a strategy. But of course, it's the government that makes that decision. We have all these proposals, so they can just be implemented. And it was kind of funny at the press conference. We had Carl-Henrik Svanberg as the chairman of the commission, and we had the digitalization minister receiving the report. And then Carl-Henrik got this question in national TV. So what do you need to do now? And he said, well, it's just up to the Prime Minister to execute. We have the report, just execute. And I think that was a really refreshing statement. So just tell the Prime Minister to do it. And it's also important that we have designed this as a whole. So we don't believe in just kind of picking some things, because then you will not get the effect. It's really about kind of raising the overall level. If you just raise a little bit here and a little bit there, you will not get the kind of major impact. So really, it's been designed as a whole. And I think that was the last one. Yes, exactly. So this was the presentation of our work on the AI roadmap that we delivered in the end of November. It is almost available in English. We got the kind of preprint a few days ago. So there will be an English version of the report probably next week. And then I can send it. So then I also had some slides basically from the Brazilian AI plan. So this is slides that come from your industry. So I hope they're correct. So the way I understand your action plan is that it's AI for good and AI for all, which I think is very nice. And it's about transforming lives of Brazilians through sustainable inclusive innovation. It's about equipping Brazil with advanced tech infrastructure with high processing capacity, including one of the most powerful supercomputers powered by renewable energies, developing advanced language models in Portuguese, and to encompass cultural, social, and linguistic diversity to strengthen AI sovereignty, train, qualify, and re-qualify people in AI on a large scale, value workers, and meet the high demand for qualified professionals, and also promote Brazilians' global leadership in AI through national technology development, strategic international collaboration. So I mean, if you just look at this level, it's very similar to the kind of things that we include. So maybe one thing I did not really see here is the focus on research. So I don't see anything about research being mentioned. So of course that's something we would have included, but otherwise I think there's a lot of similarities here. And actually I should say that actually I'm a meeting tomorrow with the MCTI where we're going to discuss the connections between this Swedish roadmap and the Brazilian AI strategy, and to see if we can find ways for us to work more together. You also have listed your opportunities as having a young population adapted adopting
technologies, diversity of national databases, and from what I understand, you have extremely high quality electronic health records. So especially the healthcare sector has extremely nice data. So I know there's several Swedish researchers collaborating with Brazil to be able to do research on that. Clean energy, research and development capacities. You already have it, so you don't need anything anymore. Multiple initiatives already. Some challenges is increased investment in infrastructure, R&D, innovation, data interoperability, strengthen talent development and retention, and support regulatory governance processes. So, maybe this is slightly different. So the plan is based on 10 fundamental premises, focus on social well-being, generation of national capacities and skills, data and technology sovereignty, strategic alignment, environment sustainability, value diversity, international collaboration, ethics, participatory governance, flexibility, and adaptability. More or less the traditional things that everyone includes. And then finally, you have these 5 pillars about AI infrastructure development. So seems to be similar to what we proposed, is with building out HPC capacity, diffusion training qualification. So this is all about how can we get more competence, improving the competence levels, all levels, improving public services. So I guess this is what we talk about, having this forward-leaning public sector, AI for business innovation. So actually this was, you probably have a more well-developed part there that we do. And then support for the regulatory and something is missing. I actually just copied the slides. Apologies, hopefully it's support for something good. So this is then the pillars of the strategy. So it seems, I mean, my view based on this is that there is actually a lot of similarities. So I promise to have some kind of lessons learned. And I think what we have learned is to be inclusive and engage as many as possible, because this kind of goes in both directions, because the more people you kind of engage with, the more they feel included in the result, and you have also kind of prepared them to take the results out of this. We really strongly believe that competence and research is the key. That it's basically a question of who can develop the competence the best and maintain and update and upgrade this competence over time. I think that is going to be the big differentiator. And I think research is basically the enabler for doing this. So both educating people to have PhDs and so on, so that they will be much better at adapting and learning the latest technology, not only doing research. We should also provide this kind of basic infrastructure. So having this kind of AI infrastructure that then will enable both public sector and companies and so on to basically build the solutions. So we shouldn't focus on, you have to have exactly the services, exactly this solution. I mean, that's not the level we want to support. We want to support the generic infrastructure, which makes it easy to build any type of services, any type of products and so on. And I think this was also quite interesting. We basically focus on what the government can do. So actually, we don't talk much about the private sector. So this was one of the kind of questions we got. Why don't you think the private sector should do more? We said the private sector will do a lot of things. They are doing a lot of things, but that is not under government control. The government can only control what they do, and the private sector control what they do. So it's up to the government to basically enable and make the private sector willing and interested in doing investments. So therefore, we really focus on what the government can do. And of course, we show how other entities can complement, but it was really a focus on the government's initiative. And finally, I think there is very much overlap between this Brazilian AI strategy and this Swedish AI roadmap. So I really hope we can find constructive ways
of working together so that we benefit both countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Fredrik. Now, questions?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your talk. Ask some things. I would say more about Europe as a whole than from Sweden. I know little about Sweden, I know little about Europe. And it seems to me that the European reaction to AI is a very defensive. Let's regulate, let's protect, let's do. And the question is, where is European DeepSeek? So China proved that you can do the same that OpenAI and all the companies in Silicon Valley are doing. And I'm giving this question to you, but I believe that in Brazil you should do the same. And you talked about the railway, electricity, and telephone. And here in Brazil, we know very well the results of being late on those technologies. It took us 100 years to master those technologies. Okay, 100 years now is 5 years. But what do you think? I don't think that Sweden alone can do that. But where is European DeepSeek? Where's the big models built in Europe? The really big ones.
No, I mean, first of all, I fully agree. I think it's a bit embarrassing that we haven't done it. So I mean, we do have like Mistral, which is this French company. So I mean, they have competitive models. So I think that was the main thing we have. There's also a German company called Aleph Alpha that's also developing models, but I don't think they have. I'm unsure if they have done something public. So I think Mistral is the main. There's also a Finnish company called Silo AI that developed a Finnish model, so also other languages. But and then when they managed to do that, they got bought up with the Americans, and now they're owned by AMD. So I think the challenge is that even when we succeed, then you basically get bought up by the other investors. So it's difficult to kind of keep them even when they are successful. But I think the challenge from a European perspective is really that we don't have the companies that are capable of scaling things up and to reach these kind of large customer bases. So I think we have the technical competence and the kind of research capacity, but we don't have the capacity of scaling. And I think another issue is that we have a too fragmented landscape where you have too many, too small actors, which means that they cannot react fast enough. So if you take DeepSeek as an example, even though they might not have spent that much on the kind of compute, they still have a team of 100, 150 researchers that could work focused on this. And we don't have those kind of sized research labs. They're much smaller, so it means that we become slower. And I think this is very much a game about scale and speed. Neither of those are really our strength, but I also think that's exactly where we need to make investments. So I am one of those who've been arguing that we need a CERN for AI. So we need this kind of large research facility where you can have large groups of the best researchers working together, but maybe temporarily, not just permanently, but to get this kind of scale and speed that we need to also be able to develop that kind of models. But so far, it's more talk and not enough action. Maybe now things might be changing due to external pressure, but I wouldn't hold my breath, even though we are very actively pushing towards this direction.
But as you mentioned, in the last weeks,
Yeah.
I think that Europe realized that the benign foreign power is not so benign.
No.
And then I'm talking about this because I know French quite well. I work for Eurotooth and also at Uria International Share. And I think things are so slow. Everything's so bureaucratic. Everything is so. And I really hope that because I love you, I love the European values, and I really hope that this shock will change things in Europe, and it's very important for us in Brazil to have other models that are not United States. And I don't think that China or Russia are models too, but so I really hope that Europe, and I don't think that Sweden can do that alone.
No. And that's also part of our strategy. We want to another part of this working together with others. So it's definitely not that we want to do it ourselves. I agree with you. We cannot do it, but we need to work together. And I think it's also that there is a need to have alternatives. So basically, that's the way I think it as well. There is also an initiative called Eurostack, basically trying to create kind of alternatives to all the different levels in the tech stack. But of course, that's even more challenging. So maybe we are doing investments in this EU Chips Act. Maybe I'm not personally, maybe I wouldn't focus too much on the hardware. I think it's probably better to focus on the software, but that's also an important part in the overall equation. So we are also working towards that. We hope I agree with you. We hope it's kind of successful.
More questions?
Congratulations on the presentation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. I'm Tobias. I am a PhD student applying for this position. Nowadays I work as a data analyst on a business, on a sector segmentation. And you talk about energy, telecoms, AI factory sector. It's a specific question. To business segmentation, do you know some application of AI?
What do you mean? Application of AI in what perspective? Any perspective?
Like for treatment, maybe.
So I mean, one thing that it's being used is for breast cancer detections. Actually, it was a quite large initiative in Sweden where they improved the breast cancer detection using these kind of tools. So that's one concrete application that I'm aware of. So I think it's more. I mean, I would say it's being used in many different places. So, for example, this detecting tax fraud and other things is another area where it's also being actively used. We're also working with the Swedish police, and there, I mean, previously they basically were manually looking through all the video footage. Now they have a tool that they can basically say we're looking for like blue cars. And you can find all the blue cars, and then you just need to look at the segments with blue cars. They have tools to fill in partial license plates. So maybe they're looking for a particular license plate, but then they only have partial views of the license plate, and then they can see what license plates could it be, and so on. So there is also kind of improving the speed with which they can collect evidence. I mentioned we work with the court systems. So there they're working with a redaction system. So basically before they hand out documents to the public, you need to remove personal information and other sensitive information. Again, this was previously a manual process. Now they have a tool that suggests, basically a user just say, is this person, should this be removed, yes or no? And you just need to click rather than to read through all the documents themselves. So this is also being developed. Another application, again, in the courtroom is that you have like individual microphones for each person in the court negotiation, and you can just say which language it's going to configure it for a language, and then everyone can speak their own language, and it's being automatically translated. so that you can facilitate the negotiations on your native language and so on. So I mean, there's so many of these applications, and this is just a handful that I'm aware of.
More questions? Yes, please.
And there I'm from India, I'm doing a master's, finishing my master's here. I have a startup here, a startup. A couple of projects try something similar to what you have already shared. One of them is related to taxes. So right now we are kind of extracting from all of the Brazilian government websites, but we have data from 1940s and 50s. From there onwards, the law is kind of really dense. We cannot have a full repository of all the data. And also, since we are using Gemini models, we are forced to kind of use the RAG method to kind of generate responses. So we are still not able to collect the entire data set of Brazil's laws in different categories. So we want to kind of know how is data managed in Sweden, and if it's possible for us to implement our solution in Sweden, how can we access those laws in a complete pool where it's structured and it's easy for us to integrate.
I must say I don't know. I haven't tried to look up all that information, but my guess is probably a large amount of it's probably quite easily accessible. So in general, we have that kind of information easily accessible, but I haven't looked at it. So I can answer the question.
Any questions? I have one question. When you presented, my first question actually is, what are the 75 proposals? I think you categorized them, or how did these proposals emerge? You told that it was 200 meetings and so on.
So basically, we did a divide and conquer approach. So basically, we defined what the chapters were going to be, and then there were a working group within the commission that was working on each of these chapters, and then basically you had a smaller working group, I think 2 or 3 people for each of the chapters, and they first kind of had an internal discussion and making proposals. So we kind of made the proposals, and then these proposals were then discussed within the whole commission, and then we are kind of improving and adding and removing and so on. So that was the general structure, and then towards the later stages, we basically just did the Excel sheet with all the different proposals. We regrouping them and kind of calculating on the costs associated with each of them, often in collaboration with experts in government offices that were doing the actual calculations. And then in the end, we basically grouped them based on the chapter, and then we also have a list of all the proposals in easy to access now.
Okay. My second question is, if you think in all of the dimensions that you were saying about these proposals, I see a very large ecosystem that you have. For instance, how to teach teachers, how to teach students, and how to have more PhD students studying AI and so on and so forth. And not only from the computer science perspective, but also the more problem-based PhD, for instance. Here in Brazil, we are very big, and many of the things that you presented here, I wasn't aware some of the things, so that's the point also, because it's very difficult to follow everything here. And what do you think, for instance, a university like Fluminense Federal University, with 60,000 undergrad students and so on. How could we think about policies to the university to develop AI, to really modify the society through the university? Because I think that it's more what we can do.
I mean, I think first of all, you can have a policy statement that we will actively work towards integrating AI in all our education programs. That's basically what we are trying to do. And then, of course, you need a number of things to enable that. You need like infrastructure. So, for example, we have the university digitalization department is then providing AI tools and providing kind of technical infrastructure for doing this. We have the pedagogical development unit providing courses for the teachers. They're providing workshops and discussions. So if you want to discuss how should I adapt my teaching, then the pedagogical development unit can help with that. And then we're also working more interdisciplinary, so creating new ways for researchers between different research fields to meet so that they can do joint applications and so on to get research funding for collaboration projects. So I think there are a number of such things one can do relatively easily. So we have also developed a course called AI at Work that's available for all employees. And it's intended for all employees at the university. So it's a few hours, 2 hours, so it's just very simple, just to have a basic understanding. So there are a number of things one can do relatively easily to get people started. Then I think it's all about how do you get as many people as possible positively interested and then enable them to do wherever they are rather than try to control everything. But I think it's about setting, I think that's why we focus on leadership. It's so important that the head of the university or whoever, they say that this is important. So for example, our director of our university said this, publicly, like, this is a priority for us. We are going to introduce AI on all our education programs. And then it doesn't say how, that's up to us to figure out how to do it, but at least it's more showing that this, basically giving the organization the mandate to work with this without them dictating exactly how to do it.
Yeah, actually, has received the invitation to be part of the commission to define policies of the university. Our rector is really interested into this. But yes, I was also asking because, how to start? So, yes, you gave some good ideas.
So we also have a university policy on like generative AI. Basically, it says we are positive, but it's up to each teacher to define what's appropriate for their course. Because it's very difficult to give kind of common and things are so different. We cannot just say everyone should do it this way. So that's basically our approach there. I know that some parts of the university have basically gone through all the courses and looked for examination. So basically see what are the effects of this on our examination on every course. We have weekly programs, programs consist of courses. So they went through all of these details to see what needs to be changed. So that's another thing.
Do you have a message? Because there are many PhD students here. Do you have a message to them?
No, I would say, I think what you said is just get started. I think that's the most important. I think most things we don't know. I think that's another, we don't know exactly how to do it. We don't know exactly what to do, but the only way to find out is to try. So therefore, I think trying and exploring and doing it in a systematic and critical manner is the best way going forward.
More questions? That's fine.
No one's critical, does it?
You are shy.